All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Danny Show. I'm your host, Daniel Cody, and this is where I give commentary and reviews on all things wrestling. Today, I would like to do a special review on as we end an amazing year in wrestling and just a great year, period, as far as I'm concerned. I would like to take this moment to do a review on my favorite matches from AEW. And if you notice, I'm kind of wearing AEW colors right now. But either way, let's get started with my top 10 favorite matches from AEW. Starting at number 10, we have Jon Moxley versus Nagata. Please forgive me if I pronounce the names wrong. Foreign names are like biblical names. If you ever read the Bible, you've probably seen how, and it came unto Nephiah, because I grew up in a spiritual background. Reading biblical names and foreign names sometimes takes a little practice, so please bear with me if I get the name wrong. But either way, Nagata and Jon Moxley on AEW Dynamite May 12th of this year. It was a good match. I really enjoyed the match. And I gotta say, Nagata is the Japanese version of The Undertaker. If you look closely, there was a moment where he had Jon Moxley in an armbar, and I literally thought The Undertaker had a Japanese relative. And I don't mean that in a racial way. I mean that with innocent humor. But it just made me think he had a Japanese brother. But either way, nonetheless, it was a great match in AEW Dynamite. And at the end, both men, even though Jon Moxley won that match, and thoughts and prayers to Jon Moxley, we hope he is doing well and recovering as he seeks rehab from alcoholism. And I applaud anyone that gets help. But either way, before that happened, he had an amazing match with Nagata, and that was one of those moments where Nagata acted like The Undertaker, but it was a great match. And at the end, they showed each other great sportsmanship, and of course, standing at ringside was Eddie Kingston, who had went from rival to going back to being a best friend of Moxley's. At number 9, we have the Inner Circle versus ATT at, and I will say their initials, in a Minneapolis street fight at AEW Full Gear. Now, I actually did a review on Full Gear a couple of months back, but what made this match so special to me was that the Inner Circle won, and we saw some amazing highlights from Sammy Guevara. I hope I said his last name correctly, but amazing highlights from him. I thought I was watching Jeff Hardy for a second when I saw all the moves that Sammy did. Not to be confused with Sami Zayn, the conspiracy guy. But either way, it was a great match, and the ending was so heartwarming as Chris Jericho paid tribute to Eddie Guerrero on the anniversary of his passing, winning the match with a frog splash. So that was a great match. At number 8, we have Britt Baker, say it with me, DMD, versus Ruby Soho on an episode of AEW Rampage Friday, Rampage 9, September 17th of this year. Now, first of all, let me just say the promo that both women cut before the match was great, and the match in itself was also great. And I just really love the way they do their promos in AEW. AEW has made some of the most amazing promos I have ever seen. And my favorite, of course, was the MJF versus CM Punk, which I reviewed. Also, you have Kingston and Punk, and then you have these two ladies right here. But Ruby Soho had just left WWE, was released, and came to AEW, and they had an amazing match. Before that, they had an amazing promo, and it's safe to say that Ruby Riot or Soho is getting much better use as far as booking is concerned in AEW. Even though Britt Baker, say it with me, DMD, retained the championship, former dentist woman turned wrestler had a great match with Ruby, and Ruby, man, awesome. At number 7, we have Christian and Jurassic Express, Jungle Boy and the Saurus versus All Elite, which consists of the Young Bucks and Adam Cole. Baby. It was a great 6-man unsanctioned street fight. It was what they call in video games a tornado tag match that went all over the place, like Peter Griffin and the Chicken. But I really enjoyed that match, and seeing the Saurus at his height doing moonsaults like that was amazing. Of course, Jungle Boy and Christian were amazing as well, and Young Bucks don't let their pretty looks fool you. They can get barbaric. They have they wrapped their knee pads in thumbtacks. I think they do that. This is just a joke, but I think the Young Bucks do that so that no one can be more prettier than them. That's why they put thumbtacks on their pads and pierce people's faces so no one can look prettier than the Young Bucks. They want to be the prettiest men on the roster. That's just a joke, but I think that's why they do it. But either way, the Jurassic Express and Christian would win that match at Full Gear of this year. Another match that I had the pleasure of reviewing during the Full Gear review. Some of you have seen it. At number 6, we have Sting and Darby Allin versus Team Taz. I believe this was at Revolution and February of this year. And let me just say this about Sting. First of all, both men had an amazing showing, and like WWE at the time, AEW was trying to make some more cinematic matches, considering that we were in a pandemic and you wanted to do things to make your show interesting. And because there weren't a lot of fans there, it gave them room to do things that wasn't always thought of except for on WWE Ruthless Aggression and Attitude Era like video games. So they did that. They would have matches backstage, and this one was somewhat cinematic as they fought in an abandoned building in downtown Atlanta. Because if you look at the background, you can notice that was Atlanta that Sting and Darby were driving through. And Team Taz came in, I believe that was a Lamborghini. But either way, it was in an abandoned building in Atlanta. They fought, and it was amazing. Sting and Darby got the victory. And let me just say this. The way AEW has booked Sting throughout this year is absolutely amazing. If I'm not mistaken, Sting has yet to lose in AEW, which is more than we could say in WWE. And it was almost as if when he went to WWE in 2015, it was kind of like his worst fears came true. They knew who he was, which was his biggest concern, considering what happened when The Rock, one of my all-time favorites, said to Booker T, "Who in the blue heck are you?" When Sting saw that, he was afraid to come. That's why he took many years to go to WWE. But when he went to WWE, all 3 of his matches, he is 1-2. And his one victory was when he made Seth tap out in a tag match alongside John Cena with Seth alongside The Big Show. His 2 losses came at Seth at Night of Champions, as well as Triple H at WrestleMania 31. And I'm not going to lie, WrestleMania 31, those 2 put on an amazing match. And of course, Triple H did need some kind of a win at WrestleMania because his WrestleMania record wasn't always that good. But it was almost as if Sting got a little bit buried in WWE. But when he came to AEW, he started having a lot of amazing matches. Most of them, I believe, were tag matches with Darby Allin. Nonetheless, great matches. Also, Darby and Sting won that one. Moving on to number 5, we have the Inner Circle versus Pinnacle at Double or Nothing earlier this year. Now, the crowd was just starting to come back a little bit because wrestling finally started with the pandemic starting to calm down a little bit before Omicron. Um, People started feeling like it was safe to finally go out and have a little bit more fun again. And WWE as well as AEW started letting their crowds come back together. And even though that happened, that was another match that went all over the place. They fought in a football stadium. They fought in a bar with Conan playing the music. Someone tell me the name of that music it was playing because it was almost like heavy metal rap, and I like that. But either way, they fought in a bar. They fought in an empty baseball stadium. They ended up fighting in the crowd as well as in the ring, in which um, once again, Sammy Guevara would get the highlight attention as he would win the match for the Inner Circle. And of course, we got to see MJF get beat up a little bit. But either way, I'm just glad Inner Circle won that match. It was like a tag team version of Peter Griffin and the Chicken. They fought everywhere, and I really enjoyed it. So that's another great match that I enjoyed. That involved Chris Jericho, and I gotta learn the words to Judas so I can sing along with the crowd. I know a little bit of it, but I'll try. At number 4, we have Andrade. Charlotte Flair's husband from WE is now in AEW. But Charlotte's husband, Andrade, faced off against Cody Rhodes in his hometown, my former hometown also of Atlanta, except they were in Duluth at the time, as Armageddon 2004 was. But they were in Atlanta, and it was a great match. I really enjoyed it. We saw some guests in T-Pain, who was also an Atlantean, who would help out Cody Rhodes. But the thing that shocked me is Cody is from Atlanta, yet the crowd still hates Cody. They're treating Cody like John Cena or The Rock in his early years. Sometimes I think Cody Rhodes should turn heel and embrace the booze. It worked for The Rock in 97. It worked for Roman now, and it worked for who else? Bret Hart in early 1997. So I think Cody should probably turn. He said he wouldn't turn, but after a while, I think it's finally going to break him, and he's finally going to turn because week after week, he tries to be the good guy, and they keep on booing the guy for whatever reason. But the highlight of that match was when he superplexed or reverse superplexed Andrade into a flaming table. And he got the worst of it. Cody got the worst of the flaming table. Andrade barely felt anything. Cody landed fully on his back. How they say, it burns. It burns. But yeah, it was a great match. Cody Rhodes would win that match, but it was brutal. It was great. Moving on to number 3, we have Kenny No Bees, as fans used to call him. I gotta say bees because I can't use that language. But we got Kenny No Bees, who, all mean jokes aside, is an amazing competitor and has a cool theme song. It's like, I think that's Pendulum that's doing that song because I know the type of sound that Pendulum has in its songs. So I think that's Pendulum doing his theme. I don't know. But either way, Kenny No Bees versus Christian Cage at All Out. It was a great match. This was a match where Christian was going to try and get the AEW championship because he had already defeated Kenny Omega for the Impact championship. But he wanted to win the AEW championship. And despite an amazing match and a little bit of assistance, Kenny Omega, or should I say Kenny Nobis, retained the championship. That was also the night we saw the debut of Adam Cole with an amazing plot twist. And then we would see the debut of Bryan Danielson before he turned heel. The crowd went nuts. One of my favorite AEW moments ever. But Kenny Omega retains in an amazing match with Christian Cage. At number 2, speaking of Bryan Danielson, we have Bryan Danielson versus Hangman Adam Page from last week's episode of AEW Dynamite. And let me tell you, it was a match that went an hour long, yet there was no contest. Darn it! Darn it! Darn it! But I will say this, despite the fact that it was a no contest match, the fact of the matter is all Adam Page needed was about 5 more seconds and he would have retained the championship. That's just my personal opinion because he went for his finisher, that little clothesline that he does, and he was about to win the match, but time had ran out. So all he needed was about 5 more seconds and the match would have ended because they had an hour-long time limit. But nonetheless, another great match. An honorary mention in this is Bryan Danielson versus Kenny Omega, another match that went past the time limit and the match timing expired. But this one was a match that almost had a conclusion. Hangman Adam Page. It's time for some cowboy stuff. Last but not least, at number 1, we have the best in the world, CM Punk versus Darby Allin at All Out. What a match. What a match. What a match. That was amazing. CM Punk faced off against arguably the heart and soul of AEW. And speaking of Darby Allin, someone tell me what was the issue with Darby and Cora Jade, if there ever was one, because I heard there was one, but if you guys know anything, let me know. But nonetheless, a great match. That's my top match for AEW this year. So what do you think about this list? What was your favorite AEW match from 2021? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you can be notified on all things from the show. Also, that's all the time I have for you today. Thoughts and prayers to Jim Ross that he would get well soon because he saw him not feeling bad. I believe he had cancer, but whatever it is, I know he's out because he hadn't been well. So thoughts and prayers to Jim Ross. Hopefully we'll see him back commentating soon. But nonetheless, that's my list. What was your favorite match? Was it on this list? Let me know what your favorite match from AEW was on this show. That's all the time I got for you today. And I'll be back tomorrow with my favorite matches from WWE. But until then, this is the Danny Show, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Have a great day.